It's Yuri Sokolov
and David Netanen,
and you're listening to the Transform Movers.
And we're back again at the Microsoft offices.
Yeah, we're back again in English. So it's not a secret. Everybody saw the cover. Everyone who follows us and listens. And we have kind of an interesting guest. It's a first for us. We're doing remote. I don't want to call it interview. We're doing a conversation. We're doing a remote episode for a first time, and we have here Alexandra, Alphyna, whatever you choose, right? And she will talk about herself in a bit, but I just want to hook up the people. Alphyna worked on titles like Civilization Beyond Earth, Sunset Overdrive, Disco Elysium, Blood, Sweat and Pixels, Hollow Knight. Those all are translations, right? And then we have companies like Wargaming, I Speak Lodge, and my personal favorite. She worked on Heroes of fucking Might and Magic, Olden Era. Like I'm kind of fanboying here.
Yeah, you're a bit starstruck. I played at least, like, I read Blood, Sweat and Pixels. I played Hollow Knight to 100% completion, Disco Elysium, not to 100% completion because it's
But I think we'll get into that. Let's
we'll go into that later.
I think maybe I missed some accolades of yours. So usually we start the episode with letting our guests to tell about a little bit about themselves, and the mic is yours.
Hi, my name is Alphyna. That's a nickname, but I mostly use it because, currently at our studio there are 6 Alexanders, I believe, and it gets very weird to talk to people, so Alphyna is better, I think. And yes, I've done all the things that you've mentioned. I also wrote a couple of books and comic books, but in the gaming industry, you generally described what I did. I'm a narrative designer mostly, although currently I'm branching into being a producer, I think is the term. Although, again, in indie studios, it's kind of weird sometimes to say who you are, because in big companies you have these assigned roles, but in indie teams, everybody does everything. But I'm also doing some creative management, let's call it that. But mostly it's about stories and delivering those stories to players.
It's kind of awesome, and I wanted to start it. We like to do kind of weird things, or it's just me. It's just me like to do. I planned here something to break the ice, but we already had a pre-interview, and I feel like we broke the ice. But for the sake of our listeners, I did a bit of homework on you, and I told you the story already. So we're invited Alphyna after I heard an episode of a podcast in Russian speaking podcast that we'll link in the episode for you to listen. Yeah, in the show notes. So I listened to it. I thought, okay, I want to speak with them, with the guys there. Alphyna was one of them, and I want to talk about Heroes. You all know how I brag about Heroes almost in every episode. We do.
It used to be once every 2 episodes, but over the course of the last 10, I mean, it's we have a segment about Heroes, specifically Heroes of Might and Magic 3. Usually,
understandable.
During our conversation with Alphyna kind of left the Unfrozen Studios, and we thought, okay, we want to do things on other things, and I went on doing a background research just this week while we scheduled this interview like a month ago, I think, and then I kind of saw all the amazing thing you did, and what other things. I went into your X profile, like the Twitter. Like I don't want to call it.
It's Twitter.
Formerly Twitter. That's what they say.
And you don't write there much, as I see, because on the first page I saw a tweet of yours from 2020, saying something along those words, like 2020. It's from January 2020. 2020 started with U.S. bombarding Iran. Iran promised to strike back, and Australia is completely burned down. This is what I call a great pilot episode. I wonder what comes next with such budget. So, how was the series?
Was big, yeah.
How was the series?
What a great twist.
Horrifying.
On March 2020, one city changed our whole world.
A city which none of us visited, but
changed our lives.
Visited us.
Wuhan. It's a joke from today's Twitter, I think.
Yeah.
So, you're a common podcast guest. Is this the first English-speaking podcast you're visiting?
No, and yeah, I like to talk. But yes, I do go to podcasts relatively often. I'm lucky to be invited relatively often, and sometimes in English as well. Although the majority of them, of course, are in Russian.
It makes sense. We basically talk in Hebrew all the time on podcasts and stuff like that.
The funny thing, when I wanted to give Amit a taste of the podcast, because it's in Russian, there are amazing AI tools today. So I upload the whole episode to Notebook LM, and then tell us stuff about this person, and tell us stuff about this person. And it's just summarizing things. It's kind of fun.
Insane.
So a translator, narrative designer, comic creator, book writer, and many accolades. What came first?
Chronologically, or in terms of importance and my identity. Chronologically, I started. I think the first important thing I did was I started drawing strip comics, and it was in the early aughts, I think they are called, in 2000 or something. Oh, no, in 2010. Sorry, I'm mixing generations here. So I was 18 at the time or something, and my comics became viral on the Russian internet before the idea of viral content existed. So it was before the popularity of any social network. They were reposted on LiveJournal and other blog platforms, and they were a big thing in Russia. Honestly, to this point, I think this is actually the biggest thing I've done, because my most viral comic about it's silly. It's about weather in St. Petersburg, but it has a musical album, a jazz festival named after it. There are a lot of merchandise with the phrase from the comic. So the phrase became an aphorism basically, and someone could probably go to a merch store in St. Petersburg even now and find some stuff with the phrase. So it's honestly extremely weird.
We'll link it as well.
But I don't own it, so obviously people don't know that I coined the phrase. But still, that was the first thing. And the rest of the comic, it was strip, slice of life, comedic comic. Lots of them exist. And it was one of them.
And you continue doing so until today?
No, actually, one thing that I'm proud of is that, so I was young. I was 18 at the time. And the young people tend to be
overly dramatic,
edgy.
Think in absolutes. So at one point, I realized that the quality of my comic was deteriorating, because there are only so many jokes you can make about daily life, really. And I just ended it at the peak of its popularity. So I could probably be a more famous person these days if I continued creating it, and it was definitely overly dramatic on my part, but I'm also proud of myself, because finishing an online product that you receive positive feedback for almost daily. So whenever I would publish a new comic, people would throw a lot of comments my way, they would repost it, it was great. So just saying, I think my quality is not up to my standards anymore, and quitting it was a thing that I'm personally proud of.
Hopefully this is not what George R.R. Martin would say.
Yeah, it's not what he wants to say, but we all know it. We all feel it.
I think George R.R. Martin is in psychological hell. Really,
Prison of his own making, definitely.
I mean, he's not young. He obviously doesn't have the energy to do things like he could 20 years ago. And all this pressure that he's under is probably not doing good things to his,
Yeah. There was a tweet of his a couple of years back that he was offended that people start saying that he will die before he that they afraid he will die before he writes the last book, and he was really offended by it.
I mean, that's probably kind of uncomfortable to hear, but I also think he will die before finishing that. So I'm a fan, but I'm not waiting for Winds of Winter. Not to mention,
you shouldn't.
the
You really
whole
shouldn't.
story.
By the way, if you've mentioned LiveJournal, he still maintains a live journal called Not a Blog.
Yeah, I know.
And he writes about his new fascination. He manages a cinema, and he really likes it. Like a local cinema where he lives.
Mm-hmm.
He picks the movies. He pays for people to bring the popcorn and everything.
That's what I do.
That's what he does now. The man swims in pools of cash, okay? Like he can bathe himself in gold or something, but
Well,
he
clearly
runs a
that's
cinema.
what he likes.
Everyone deserves a hobby. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's okay.
And honestly, really. Sometimes I'm also a huge fan of David Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen The Return, the third?
No, I'm actually watching Twin Peaks for the first time with my partner right now. We're in the middle of season 2 when it began to be a bit weird.
So I won't spoil anything, but the thing is that the third season aired 25 years after the second season, and I was extremely skeptical. So it really felt to me like, an old guy wants to relive his glory days and revive the brand. I didn't think it was about money, but maybe about fame and feeling young again, So I was stunned when it turned out that the season was great. It's it's probably the best thing that Lynch has ever done, in my personal opinion. So such things happen. But way more often you see, these aged rock stars giving concerts and playing their same hit over and over again for 30 years and doing nothing new. And I was I was 18 and I hated the idea of being like them. And obviously it felt like I was becoming one of them because, so if you read any strip comics, any online strip comics, that jokes there repeat themselves. They usually have a pattern, and they have, I don't know, let's say 20 types of jokes, if I'm being generous, that they just repeat. And that's kind of okay, because people who subscribe to such comics, they don't necessarily read every installment. So it's not like a story, a gripping story that you follow. So you can miss one of them, you can miss 10 of them. But again, I was being very dramatic, so it didn't even occur to me that it's kind of fine to repeat yourself once in a while. I was like, no. Every joke of mine has to hit the bullseye. It has to be new, it has to be fresh, it has to be interesting. And if I can't do that anymore, I should close it.
But you know what's going to happen? You're gonna work on an amazing video game. Okay, it's gonna be a classic, and then 20 years from now, the publisher or some people that bought the publisher or another company that devoured the entity that was
do the awesome game 2.
Yeah, no, not a game 2. They will do a remaster, a re-release, the nostalgic edition, ultimate edition, something like that.
I mean, I'm currently literally working on not a remaster, but a reimagining of a cult classic game. So it's not up for me to judge remakes, absolutely. And if a publisher does that, that's on them. And also some remakes are good and great, and digital preservation is a thing, and there's nothing inherently bad about them. It's more about an artist getting stuck in the same old ways for what felt to me like eternity, even though it was 2 years.
I think Amit was referring more to things like World of Warcraft, where I don't feel like there's any reimagining there, but
yeah, well, do you know that just this week, Fortnite released something called Fortnite OG, okay, which is the first season. They are now in season 7 or something like that, 7 years ago. And they're now re-releasing
The old
the
limited
first
content?
season, the old limited content, they're releasing it again at an accelerated pace.
It's game as a service. It sells, you know.
Sure. So, but why do you find it annoying?
I don't know. It's something. It's
Fortnite isn't really a creative statement. It's a space for people to have fun, and it's very obviously a commercial space, and like it's not trying to pull some artistic vision on you, really. So if some people want to have fun in, like, I understand that if you want to criticize capitalism, sure. So, you know, they're like feeding you this new content, and now you're overfed and you want like the simpler days back, but hey, you can do that for a price, you know? Yeah, sure. But I don't think it's like evil. So people want to have fun in different ways, let them. Like,
I guess I'm just imagining Tim Sweeney like sitting on buttloads of money, just saying, you know what? We paid so much for the appearance of Lady Gaga in the like season 4 of Fortnite or whatever. We have to reuse it some way. And they obviously found a way. I mean, Blizzard waited for 15 years with World of Warcraft. And people have actually very strong memories for World of Warcraft. I don't know how many people have nostalgia for Fortnite Season 1.
Yeah, that's
you know,
a good question.
it's completely new. It's a completely new generation. For example, I worked for a company that did kind of Fortnite Lite, let's call it. And the people that started the company are young people. When I worked there, the CDO was 23 years old, I think. So, and he was old for the game because he started this whole company. He started a product to help his younger brother, who was 15 or 14 at the time, who played Fortnite. So he joined his brother to play Fortnite, and he was bad. So he developed a game to train himself in Fortnite, and this kind of blew up, and he got an investment, and it grew. So
it actually was purchased by Playtika a while back.
But the original idea came from a 14-year-old boy. So for this 14-year-old boy then, who's 20-something today, he is the target audience.
That's nostalgia, right?
Because nostalgia actually, the best nostalgia is coming from when you're 14 or 15 years old, right? So the best music, actually, there are studies on that people tend to love music that they loved when they were 15. So they treat people, the old people with mental problems, people that don't respond to anything. They would put them some popular music from when they were 15, and they start to react to this music and dance and smile. So Fortnite for those 20-something people, the first season is kind of nostalgic.
Well, I didn't mean to be anti-consumer, anti-capitalist. I mean, I work for a mobile game company. I know the meaning of finding a way to fund the thing that's called developing a video game, which is an expensive endeavor, right? Mostly.
And for those of you who joined this podcast not because of us, but because Alphyna, we're representing the evil industry,
the dark side.
Me and Amit are working on the mobile industry. We're developers, and you can read about us and hate us later. But let's focus on Alphyna here. So
the mobile developer self-hatred, like self-loathing, it really is a thing. There's nothing bad about mobile games.
No, we'll love ourselves.
Sure, you love yourselves, but you still feel this need to be, defensively sarcastic about what you're doing. But what you are doing is creating products that serve a different audience than computer games or console games. So a lot of people who play mobile games just wouldn't play any games otherwise. So it's not like you're making some sort of inferior games. You're making what's the antonym to inferior?
Superior?
You're making superior movies, or I don't know, superior crosswords or whatever.
I don't know,
people who would otherwise just solve crossword puzzles.
I don't know, the recent trends in the mobile games industry, really brings out the cynic in me. I mean, there's now a genre of games that promise to do the thing that mobile game ads do. Like, do you know? We all know
the fake.
Yeah,
the
like
fake
run
ads.
along
ads.
this line where you go
Yeah.
left and right to do stuff.
That's like the new thing. The previous thing was taking the pins out.
taking away these pins from.
So we're already so deep into the rabbit hole of misleading people to play our games. It really brings out the cynic in me, and I hate it. But it actually brings people along, and some people enjoy these games. So
I'd actually say that. So these ads worked because they kind of look fun. Like it's mindless fun, but still, the cynical part was where you would click the ad, install the game, and it would be some like shitty. Farming simulator or whatever. So the fact that mobile developers are actually forced to make the games that at least look fun as ads is less cynical, I think. I mean, at least you play what you clicked.
But the funny part about that is that those games that look fun, they actually look fun. But until today, I haven't seen anybody who took those games and made them actually fun, because they're fun on paper, but when they do not pass the test of playtest, right? So when you put people to actually, let's play, let's see if it's fun. It's fun for a minute, and then that's it.
That makes sense. Well, there actually is a game on Steam, so a computer game that's called something like "You Want These Games, Don't You Sucker?" something in all caps, and it's like a collection of games made after mobile ads. I haven't played it; it's on my wish list, and I'm like, I'll buy it one day because who knows? Maybe they made it fun. And I'm curious about as to what extent they made fun of them.
But if it is a collection. And every game is
it's meant
fun
to be
for a
humorous.
minute.
It's meant to be satire on mobile gaming.
Yeah, so that's art, right? It's a commentary about something that exists in the world. So I like it.
We stopped at the comics. So you stopped doing the comics.
Whoa.
Today I'm playing this part, right? I'm remembering this.
Amazing.
So
that's a complete role reversal for us. Amazing. Okay.
And then I kind of floated into the gaming industry. I get asked a lot how I ended up there, and honestly, it was by accident. So I was a gaming journalist for a while, I'm sorry to say, and I was writing an article. So it was a piece on several video game towns and cities, and I analyzed them in various ways, like trying to count how many people live there, for example. And since there is a very crucial aspect of Pathologic, the first game made by Icepeak Lodge, is that all the events happen in a single town. I included it in my article, and since the developers are Russian, I got a hold of their contacts and got in touch with them to ask several, questions for them to elaborate on things. And then we just kind of stayed in touch. So we were in touch for a while. I don't know if you were part of this culture and if you remember this culture, but when I was younger, so much younger than today, there kind of existed this culture that probably shifted to social networks these days, where you would add a person on like ICQ or Skype or whatever, and you wouldn't really know this person, but you would just talk to them sometimes. So I think this is what happens like on Twitter or on Discord communities these days, but it used to be very personal. I don't think I would add a person I don't know on, Telegram these days and just chat with them, but it was normal back then. And that's how I stayed in touch with Nikolai, the CEO of Icepeak Lodge. So then after a while, they released their new game called Knock Knock. And we were in discussions about some translations with him because I was already doing translations at that point. And then he wrote to me and said like, hey, we released a new game. I said, cool, that's great. He said, yeah, except we kind of forgot about the press release. And I was like, you forgot to send it? And he was like, no, we forgot it needs to exist. And I was like, okay, so do you want me to write a press release for you in English and everything? And he was like, yeah, please help us. So I helped out with that. And then I'm just kind of stuck because there was this marketing loop after game released and some interview needed to be done and no one at the studio spoke fluent English. So they needed a person who could translate them for interviews and respond to emails. So I started very low and just kind of naturally climbed up. So I wrote some marketing materials and marketing texts. Then I started doing discussions about in-game stuff. Then I became the narrative designer. Then I kind of became the narrative lead by the end of the production, because Nikolai is extremely talented and he's absolutely the mastermind behind everything, the creative lead. But he's a bit better at local scenes than big logical constructions. So like constructing the whole plot and how everything affects everything was not really his forte. So I did that and I managed him somewhat at the end. And that was my glorious ascension to the world of game development.
Which is kind of awesome, if you ask me.
Absolutely. It's like you kind of rolled into it. It probably fits your like personality and skills and everything.
Yeah. So this you haven't mentioned. So when you rolled into it and you did wrote a piece on gaming and stuff like that, this means that you had something for gaming prior to that, like you were a gamer.
Absolutely. Like as any person of my generation, of course, I am a gamer, and I was a gamer at that point. Well, okay, not any person, obviously, but yes, I started playing video games often when I was, I think, 8 years old, and I don't know if you have them in Israel, but we used to have computer clubs in Russia, you know, and I didn't have a good computer. I didn't have any computer. I didn't have a computer or console, but I had a friend. Her name was Kira, and so we were like two very young girls, like 8 or 9 years old, and we would spend our lunch money on the computer club, and we would go there, and it was like filled with smoke and cursing teenagers playing Counter-Strike, and we would sit there and play Blizzard games. So we mostly played Diablo 2 and Warcraft 2, and I think some Unreal Tournament, and then
all classics. Yeah.
Actually,
yes, of course. Yeah. And then
amazing.
Our money would end, but obviously we would not want to go away, so we would just stay at the computer club, and we were obviously kind of weird for the boys. Well, they're boys to me now, but they looked like adults to me back then. Like, I don't know, maybe 15, 16-year-old boys who played Counter-Strike, but they loved us because, you know, it's one thing to frag your opponent, and it's another thing to do that while a young girl is watching it like this, you know, like with shiny eyes. So while, of course, they were like rude and, you know, they were youngsters, they were never evil. They never did anything bad to us. I think they kind of enjoyed our company, so they would, of course, you know, like put on this front and pretend that, like, hey, little girls have no place here, like, go away, we're playing serious games. But then we're like looking at us like, but she didn't go away, which is great because I want to show her my skills.
So
it was so much fun.
That was your like first interaction with an incel. That's what you're saying.
An incel? No, come on, they were just boys. Why? Like, I mean, it was. Like
I see you is confused. Look it up later. Look it up later.
I'll look it up.
No. I know who incels are, but
I'm not.
No. He's
okay.
My boy here is too pure, too innocent.
So since it was the 90s in Russia, some of these people probably died of overdosing or being killed later. But it was all right.
The funny part is that I'm listening to that. I kind of had the experience that you're talking about, and I'm done because I know how it happens in Russia and it happened in Russia and how it was in Israel. We actually didn't have computer clubs at least the same way we had in Russia. I remember in '97 I was going to computer clubs the same way you're telling, saving lunch money and saving bus money. I would ride for free. I would hide from the conductor and then take this money to the computer club. And there was 2 games. For me, it was 2 games in the 90s. It was Heroes 2 and it was Carmageddon. Which
also
was
very respectable choices.
Yeah. Those 2 games were huge back then.
Good choices for a 9-year-old, like Carmageddon.
Listen, I won't mind playing a game or 2 today, but the version without zombies, the original version when you can go over
the
people
blood is
and
red.
the blood
green.
is red and you can kill cows. Now a couple of people went away from our podcast and because they don't want to kill cows, and it's kind of awkward.
Well, it's natural.
Yeah.
So anyway, yes, I was a gamer, and so Pathologic, like I said, the first game of Icepick Lodge was released in 2005, and I played it when I was 15 when it was released, and it made a huge impression on me. Honestly, it's like one of those things that kind of had an impact on me as a person in general, because so again, I'm Russian, and the game was made by a Russian team. But what is crucially important, it was heavily influenced by Russian culture. And that was the first time ever I played a game and was like, huh? A game really can read like a book, you know? Huh? It gave me a very new angle on Russian culture. It honestly educated me culturally in some ways, and like it was a thing. So it was, I was a gamer, and I was also a fan specifically of this studio and this game and its setting and everything. So I was very much prepared to join the studio. But the game was very much a cult classic in Russia at the time when I joined Icepick Lodge. So there were a lot of other people who were also very much prepared to join the studio at the time. But I guess
it doubles the awesomeness, right?
Yeah, I guess I just clicked with the team. That's what makes or breaks it in the end. At least in this specific case, because Icepick Lodge is like, they always call themselves a sort of rock band. And while I think it's like a bit funny, it's also kind of true, because it's a studio unlike any others, and it doesn't have normal hiring processes, for example, which, you know, has its benefits and has its minuses as well.
Can you elaborate? It's kind of interesting.
I mean, the studio has a lot of fans and a lot of contacts in the industry. I'm not saying that we've never published like a job on a website.
Job listing, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think. I think that it did happen once or twice, but mostly when a specialist is needed, it's just found. So the studio is like, I don't know, like a comet. So there is this center, and then there is this huge aura of people who used to work on it or are fans who are in touch with the team. And whenever a specialist is needed, it's kind of sucked in from this aura instead of being found in a normal way. Mm-hmm. And again...
By the way, we totally had that experience in Jelly. Like ex-Jelly Button employees like us, we take care of each other. Like we still have a WhatsApp group, a Discord server.
Yeah,
we help each other.
I'll elaborate a bit. So we worked at a company that was closed by the company that purchased us and absorbed the IPs. And then when everybody, it's in a single day, something around 100 people went home without jobs. And it's happened 2-3 years ago.
About 2 years ago.
About 2 years ago. So up until now, we keep in touch, and you know, when we need somebody, it's kind of okay. This person worked with me, and I know he's good. So let's go. And actually, in Israel, we kind of have a small community.
Yeah.
So everybody knows everyone, and it's the same for us, right?
We totally get like the vibe you're describing. And actually, if I follow the timeline here, it's before like the industry became a huge industry. Like it was like on the precipice of that. It's like 2000, late 2000s.
Sure,
like
but
that.
I mean, it's the same now for the studio as well. And like, you know, when I think about it, perhaps we could find better professionals if we did normal hiring, but also it would be resource intensive for a small studio. And also when you're working on kind of weird creative projects, you need you need your vibes to resonate, and that is something that is very hard to evaluate during normal HR process. And sometimes I know it might sound controversial, but for project like I Speak Lodges, it's sometimes more important for vibe, like for a person to pass the vibe check,
It's not
than for them
controversial at
to
all.
be like a super professional. So someone's hard skills can be improved, but the vibe can't. It's just, it sounds funny, but it is important. So yeah. And
Actually,
again, if you're a professional in the industry, and like I have 10 years of experience and the creators of the studio have like 25, they have a lot of contacts. We've done a lot of networking. You always know a person who can do the thing you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of the thing is that even in big companies, and I can speak for Israel, right? The vibes of the person, I'm hiring a lot of people, right? I'm in a lot of interviews, and one of the most important things for me is that I can, the stupid name for the coffee cup or the beer test. Would I want to drink a beer with this person? So it's something like, they even say that the hiring manager usually makes a decision in the first minute. Will he hire the person or not? I want to believe it's not true. I want to believe that I'm coming impartial to those interviews and they can swing me. But probably, statistic doesn't lie. And if I'm resonating with a person, then he has more chances to come in and work with me. So yeah, the big companies do it as well. And it's not weird at all.
I actually try to balance that when I'm checking like home assignments that we have for our company. I'm trying not to look at the resume before I check the home assignment. I check it based on just the code they submit, just the answers. And then I use the resume to like verify, well, is that a senior developer? Is that a junior that just learned to code because it looks like that? And try to align that because especially CVs with like pictures and links to work and stuff like that, they really sway you.
We can want all we want to be impartial, but we as people we're biased.
You will be very happy to know, or maybe you know already, that there is a study that shows that men with beards have higher salaries than men without beards. Literally. So we do judge people even based on their looks subconsciously, even when we don't want to do that. Absolutely. And somehow it turns out that beards look cool. I don't know. So like taller men with beards get paid more than short men without beards.
Actually, my career kind of grew since I started to grow a beard.
So you hacked the system.
If you track all of my pictures in any social media that I had pictures in, and you combine it with LinkedIn profile, you would see that my career started to grow with my beard.
I think you're confusing the cause and the effect because you've been programming for so long, your beard started to grow a bit more.
Well, actually, the same may be true about the study because, but again, younger people can also grow beards. Anyway, so yeah, back to vibe checks. I guess I passed the vibe check like with flying colors, but after we released Pathologic 2, which is a reimagining of that old Pathologic game that I loved so much.
When you say reimagining, what do you mean?
I mean that, we started a project, so Pathologic is a cult classic, and we started thinking that, hey, we can do a remake, just, revamp the visuals, remake it on a new engine, and, hey, release it, But very, very, very quickly, it became clear that we had a lot of dissatisfaction with certain creative choices and that we wanted to make it deeper. And, the deeper we dived in, the more ideas came. So it became a sort of retelling of the same story, but using not only different assets, but also different mechanics, different smaller quests. So like the general story is the same, but the specific smaller stories that it's told through are different. The approach to storytelling is very different. We changed a lot of ways that we told the story, and Pathologic 2 was innovative in a lot of ways. It like received some awards for that. So it does feel like we didn't do it in vain, basically.
So it's like two different movies based on the same book, right?
Yes. We actually, Pathologic features theatrical themes very heavily, and we use the phrase, it's like a different staging of the same play, So like the source material is the same, but the director is different, even though the actual person doing it was the same, but the vision is a bit different. And currently, I'm somehow back at iSpeak Lodge again, and we are making... So the old game, the original Pathologic, had 3 main characters. It was the story of a plague outbreak in a small town, and 3 different types of healers tried to solve it, and each of them had their own story and their own view of events. I don't know if you've seen Rashomon, a Japanese movie. So it was like that. The same events happened, and each of the characters has their own view of what they meant, why they happened, and what needs to be done about them. And Pathologic 2 only featured one of these characters, so now we are making Pathologic 3, which features another of these 3 characters.
Cool. That's like, by the way, it reminds me of Resident Evil. Like some of the Resident Evils have been retold countless times from different perspectives. Like the most recent one, like I think Resident Evil 4 had already twice told the story from each of its characters' views. Okay, so it's a common thing. You coming from comics also probably helps you like envisioning this, because basically comic book Heroes is the same retelling. Like I can't tell you the number of times I watched Ben Parker's death. Okay, to enable the becoming of Spider-Man, I think like 200 times, and it's often very interesting to watch it again from different lens.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
This specific case is not. And also, I want to. You said somehow you found yourself in iSpeak Lodge again.
Yeah.
So using your words, you kind of was sucked from this aura that they had already.
Yes, sort of. So when we released Pathologic 2, I left the studio because I wanted to do something different. And I actually think it was a great decision, because I worked for summarily 5 years in like normal studios. I worked for 2-something years at Wargaming, and for 3-something years at Unfrozen, and the numbers don't match because there was an overlap when I worked part-time for Unfrozen. Also, I did a number of very small indie projects and stuff like that. Also, I translated Disco Elysium. Was part of the team translating Disco Elysium, but that's irrelevant here. What is relevant is that I've learned a lot about very different processes and types of managing and team building, team communication, and stuff like that. I think I obtained certain expertises that I didn't have when I left iSpeak Lodge, and now that I've returned with all this experience, and I think that I'm I can give a lot more to the team that I could back then, because back then I was a creative who kind of got a hang of managing people, and now I'm more of a producer who can do creative stuff. And this is crucial for iSpeak Lodge, because there are a lot of very talented people, and I'm genuinely in awe with some of the people at the studio, but they're also very bad at managing themselves, like communicating among themselves. And I don't mean that they argue. I mean, they do, but in a constructive way. I mean that literally they can like discuss a feature for an hour and then leave the call without assigning the task to anyone, because everyone was like, hey, so we came up with a vision. Cool.
Can we zoom in on?
So you really need a person who will just assign implementing that vision to someone. That probably sounds absurd, but this I think happens more often than is discussed with very creative teams.
I do want to zoom in on that specific role of a producer, because I think it's the first time we're speaking to a producer that is like, that's like your title.
I wanted to keep it chronological, but
No. We don't have
everything
to.
goes.
I mean, I
Just
don't
keep
know
everything
if I'm
in
a
your
producer.
head.
I'm doing everything, but I'm calling myself a producer because I also do narrative design. I do quest design for Pathologic 3, which is like, we already have a story, we already have a number of gameplay systems. Now let's combine them and describe how we can tell the story through these gameplay systems, not just dialogue, but also like other types of storytelling, of which there are plenty in that game. So I do that, but it's just that I know that other people on the team can do that as well. But like managing processes and making sure everyone has, so that's project management. I don't know how to call myself. I'm the person who makes sure that every meeting that I'm in has an artifact after it, so has a result, has a specific task, and that things get done. Is that being a producer? I don't know. Honestly, I don't really care. I wrote a creative producer on my LinkedIn because that kind of felt like the closest thing. But again, in small teams, people do what they need to do and what they're good at doing, and that's about me being sucked in. I was sucked, so I left Unfrozen because I was terribly burnt out, because I worked there for 3.5 years and I took a single week of vacation in 3.5 years, and that week I took to play Baldur's Gate 3, so I didn't really rest. I was still sitting at the same computer, and that was unhealthy, and that's on me. I should have managed my work-life balance better. But there were also some creative differences with the team, and I was so burnt out, I realized I can't fix him. I don't have the energy. So we parted ways. And the best way you can do after you get burnt out is give yourself a month of vacation at least. Just get your energy back. You won't do good in any other role, no matter how cool the role is. And that's what I decided to do. But then Nikolai was like, sure, we'll wait for you in December, but can you just jump into this call for 1 sec? And insanely enough, I felt so useful in that one call where he asked me to join. It was, I think, a call with a publisher about the marketing plan. And I saw Nikolai splash around in marketing, and I was like, they really need a person who can talk to publishers on their own terms. And at Unfrozen, I also did a lot of marketing and a lot of communication with the publisher, and it was effortless for me to join this conversation. And it's so rewarding when it's not hard for you to do, but you feel that you are bringing a lot of good to the team, because the coefficient here, so my effort compared to how good I felt for helping them out was so huge that yes, I got sucked into immediately. I did force myself to take a 3-week vacation after that, but it was really a no-brainer for me to jump back into action when the vacation ended. It just felt way too natural to resist.
It's awesome when you feel at home when you're at work. Mm-hmm. We can relate. We had this not once and not twice in our careers, and also we totally get the thing about small companies where you're the jack of all trades and you do all the stuff. In any startup, you would do anything. Recently, we had one guest, a CEO of Glaive Games, who said I'm ordering stuff from the supermarket for our team.
He's like the office manager as well as the CEO.
He's just like, he says, why should I pay to office manager to order things? It's 5 minutes for me, right? So you actually do all kind of things. But yes, getting back to your original path into the gaming world, we had this thing in our podcast when we would invite people from different occupations, and we would ask them, what do you do? What do you do all day? So we never had a narrative designer, and we actually never had a narrative designer from an indie game. So it's a double greatness. So can you tell us what is a narrative design? What do you do? What is your day like?
Okay, so absolutely. But first I'll need to lay some groundwork because there are a lot of different types of work related to narrative that a person can do, and I've done several types of work. So to just run through the chronological order, after I left IcePeak Lodge, I worked at Wargaming and then at Unfrozen. And my job there was different from what I did at IcePeak Lodge back then and from what I do now. So generally speaking, there are several types of professions related to narrative. In smaller companies or on projects that aren't really heavily focused on narrative, they're all usually done by the same single person, but still. So you can be a lore master, which is a person who comes up with the lore for the game, not necessarily even the texts for the game. For example, George R.R. Martin was the lore master for Elden Ring. So he wrote the original mythos, the history of the world. As far as I know, we don't know like
maybe they used his name.
But as far as
actually, several of his themes do occur in Elden Ring.
We don't
usual
know
thing.
Even if he wrote any stories for the game. He wrote the backstory, as far as I understand. So he was like the ultimate lore master. Basically, like a writer, classic writer, book writer, can be a good lore master. Then you can be a writer, which is a person who writes stuff for the game. Surprisingly enough, narrative work does not boil down to that, but obviously a lot of it is about just writing texts. The writer is not always a person who comes up with decisions and ideas. Sometimes you just get sent an outline and your job is simply to write it in pretty words, you know. Then you can be a let's say quest designer, which is what I described earlier, a person who looks at stories that okay, so you can also be, let's say, like a script writer, which is a person that actually invents the story of the game. And again, you don't necessarily have to be a game developer for that. You can come up with a story, and then you can be a quest designer, which is a person who comes up with ways to tell the story using the tools that the game provides, which can be dialogue, cutscenes, item descriptions, mechanics, visual tools, anything. So absolutely anything that exists in a game can be used to tell a story if the designer so desire. So a quest designer does that within the bounds of a single quest, and the narrative designer is usually a person who does that on a higher level, so who invents narrative mechanics, which is not a thing that happens very often, but it does happen sometimes. And then you can be like the narrative director, which is a person who oversees, sometimes overlooks all of it, but also manages, outsources. So, for example, if you need, a cinematic that is made by a different agency, it's probably the narrative director who would direct that. So, lots of things to do. And that, generally speaking, is a tradition of just calling all that narrative designer, because people think that calling someone a writer is uncool for some reason. So
we in mobile industry we call it the copy people.
Okay, so you are even more
evil.
Condescending,
as we said earlier,
towards our people.
No, we are not. It's the industry. We are.
Sure. I didn't mean you personally, but. So at IcePeak Lodge, I was a narrative designer. My job on Pathologic 2 was to take the stories that were mostly written by Nikolai, sometimes by us together, but mostly by him, and then retell their logic using the instruments of the game. So come up with basically which character stands where, what happens if you don't come here on time, which can be told through dialogue or through this scene or that scene. I also came up with a so-called mind map, which is a thing that replaces the quest log in Pathologic. So the idea was that people hate reading texts in quest logs, and instead we made this sort of mind map, which is like a So it's a
nodes.
Structure. It's a structure of nodes connected and showing the structure of the plot. But I'm sorry to say that narrative designers don't very often get to come up with new ways to do things, and I was very lucky to have this opportunity. And we think that it did work really well. Then in wargaming, I was a lore master, so I wrote the setting for a project. And then at Unfrozen, I was kind of doing everything. So I wrote the lore and the texts and came up with the story and came up with the structure for the campaign and came up with some storytelling tools that were not originally intended.
I kind of heard that you had something to do with, in some extent, with the book Blood, Sweat and Pixels, and there was kind of interesting story.
Yeah, it's a story about the gaming community. So when this book was released, obviously it was a huge hit, and it was translated into Russian. And it was translated into Russian by a person who clearly wasn't really very familiar with the gaming industry, so the translation was awkward. And there was a very critical article about it on one of Russian-speaking gaming websites. And I was working at iSpeak back then, and I was kind of joking. So I jokingly volunteered to do a retranslation, and I wrote in the comments that, hey, contact me, to the publisher. Contact me, we'll make a deal. And they did contact me, and I was like, okay, so I have to do it now. But it wasn't a chore. It is a great book. It's well written. It's very interesting. And I had a great opportunity to do another translation, which I also, I added a glossary to it and a preface, to make it more accessible to non-gamers. Because there are a lot of slang in the game, and also there is this funny issue with how some terms are understandable to a non-gamer in English because it's just a common English word, but they become just nonsense to a Russian-speaking person because it's a loan word from English, so you can't understand what it means. So you have to either translate them, which makes it sound very weird and unnatural because no one talks like that in the actual industry, or you have to explain everything. And so I did explain everything, and I did some additional job on the book basically. And then the book was a huge hit, which is great news because it's important for the industry, and it's great that so many people have read it.
Yeah.
Actually,
did you get a chance to read it?
No, I'm one of those who discovered that it's a great book from you. Up until then, I was sure that. Remind me how I forgot the name of the author again.
Jason Schreier.
I was sure that Jason Schreier is a schmuck up until then.
But because of the articles in Kotaku?
Yeah. But it was unbased on anything. It just was this aura, this person.
I'm actually frustrated with Jason right now because I've read all three of his books. Okay, so there's Blood, Sweat and Pixels, Press Reset, and most recently Play Nice, which is all about just Blizzard entertainment. And clearly, Jason knows about the problems in our industry, like crunch, which we heard from Alphyna firsthand, just right now. And he knows about some practices which are borderline, I don't know, stuff that will get you to the HR office, okay? He knows about everything. And his latest book doesn't offer much in terms of okay, how can we fix the industry?
Oh, I remember this.
He doesn't say anything. He just presents a bleak image of all the studios have problems,
but
which are huge.
Would you expect a writer to be the one to fix the world?
I don't know. He spoke to a shitload of programmers. He probably knows, he has a clue what can we improve on?
I think that there are two aspects to his work, to Schreier's work. So one thing he does is investigative journalism, which somehow is less popular in the gaming industry than in the wide world. Somehow people don't do the thing that he does, where they actually use journalistic standards. It's also honestly a bit weird. I'm not sure why he's the only big name who does that, but that's very important because he just teaches people standards. He teaches us that you can't just publish a leak, you have to corroborate the story, you have to ask around, you have to get a lot of opinions on any issue, and that's very important because it teaches people good practices. Then there is the fact that he has stances on issues. So each of his books is not just about how games are made, but it's about an issue that the story of the book revolves around. And the issue of crunch is universal, is important, and that's why I think Blood, Sweat and Pixels was such a hit, and that's why it's so important. It was also very therapeutic for a lot of developers, especially indie developers, to learn that big companies make dumb mistakes. So as a smaller developer, you might think that, hey, BioWare would never choose a wrong engine to make their huge next hit. Oh, wait, turns out they would. And so we aren't the only idiots in the industry. No, that's kind of important information. But
actually, knowing couple of people that were hired by big companies, big AAA companies, say, yeah, they do make mistakes. Those people should
the mistakes they do are on a bigger scale than the mistakes we do, I think.
Yeah, but as a smaller developer, you don't know that. You might assume competence, which you shouldn't, which is why the book is important. But then there is Press Reset, which I've done some editing on it in Russian, and it's about a very specifically American type of job instability. So it's about how American developers get thrown around different states, and it doesn't matter to the rest of the world. So I think he was kind of in a bubble here when he was writing it. I mean, sure, job security in general is a thing, but then again, it really isn't in a lot of countries, and a lot of countries treat the idea of job security very differently. Like in a lot of post-Soviet countries, you are happy if you actually have a record of your job, and the company pays taxes for you instead of just giving you money in an envelope, So dude, out of touch here with the rest of the world.
Yeah, but I assume he targeted the more profitable community, and maybe
he wrote about what he knew. It's not a bad thing, but that's why the second book, I think, was much less made much less of a punch, and also its structure was kind of and I haven't read the third book, so I don't know if he offers solutions, but I feel that he feels that he needs to present a social issue with each of his books, even though he could just do good investigative journalism, and that would be good enough.
So you sold me. I'll read it. I'm just I'm in a hiatus from the writer
Sanderson.
From writer.
Finally,
everybody loves to hate from Sanderson. I'm waiting for the last book to be transferred into graphic audio format. Okay, so Blood, Sweat and Pixels, you translated it, and you, again, I want to come back to the gaming world. You worked on kind of big titles. So I'm used to the, when you're finishing a title, you see all of those credits, and most of people skipping them, but sometimes you don't, for I don't know what reason. And you start to see those long credits, and you see people from different countries. Do your name appears in credits for the games you worked on, like games you translated, for example?
Yes, I think it should. I'm not sure. You mentioned Civilization Beyond Earth and Sunset Overdrive. Yes, they were I worked on them a long time ago for an agency, and honestly, I have no idea what they're So there actually was a scandal in the industry a while ago, where it turned out that some translocalization agencies don't include the names of all the people who have worked on the game. They only provide names of managers to developers, and obviously developers they don't have the info, so they just include what they are offered to the game. And there was this sort of drama where translators reasonably rose up and said would it hurt you to include my personal name on the list? And then they were included. So I have no idea if my personal name is included in Civilization Beyond Earth and everything. But in all those later games like Disco Elysium and Hollow Knight, yes, absolutely, my name is there. And yes, I did watch the credits to make sure it's there.
actually, I think it's. Just came to me. We can find a recording of the credits from any game, feed it to some AI. Now, please find this name. And this would be the answer if the name is there, and then you can screenshot it and
so you won't have to watch like 10 minutes of credits.
If I had my name, even in Civilization Beyond Earth, which is, in my opinion, the weakest installment in the whole franchise, but it's still a great game, I would put it on my wall. You know, I would frame it and put it on my wall.
Yeah. Unfortunately, since we're working in the mobile games industry, we don't have credit scenes because the game never ends. So
we don't have credits. By the way, how was it to work on huge titles? Like, was you're a part of those teams as a translator? Were you a part of the localization team from outsourced company, or you were in any other way part of the company, or?
Yes, so for Civilization and for Sunset Overdrive, yes, I worked for an agency. So it was kind of hands-off, really. I was just given materials, which is why you mentioned that, like, you worked on some big titles, and I'm like, not really. Don't overhype me there. I was just a hired outsourcer doing a translation. But for other projects like Hollow Knight, like Disco Elysium, so even though, for example, for Disco Elysium, I did work technically for an agency, I was very involved with the translation, and we had contact with the original developers. We were allowed to so, like, in Disco Elysium, the dialogue trees are very, very non-linear, as you can probably imagine. And translators receive materials as spreadsheets. So, the order of lines is linear, obviously. And it's impossible to figure out which is the answer to which and how they are structured. So we had to look into the engine and search for each line to see where it's located in the dialogue tree to make sure the translation fits the context. It was additional work, but it was also I love the game, and it was huge fun, really. I kind of stopped doing translation for several years after Disco Elysium because I was like, nothing can get better than this. For me as a professional, call me back when Silk Song is released, okay? And the rest is that's not technically true. I translated Lunacid recently, which is an indie game in the vein of old From Software games, and I really like it as a game. So again, I was happy with the opportunity to do the translation. So with a small, it's not insane to say that I kind of worked with Disco Elysium because I was very involved with the localization. And also with some smaller games like Hollow Knight and Lunacid in these games, I work with a studio called Kid Fox Games on a lot of their games. I work with them directly. So not through an agency, just sometimes it's literally the developer or the publisher who contacts you and gives you all the info, and you get an opportunity to ask direct questions to the developer. Sometimes they change minor things in the game as per your request. Obviously, it's mostly UI related. So you say, hey, I don't know, this window can't ever fit normal text in Russian. And hey, I actually wanted to redesign it for a while, so I'll do that. But still, so in my life, I've done creative jobs where I did things myself, so to speak. I mean, with a team, but I implemented a vision. And then there are jobs I've done where I supported someone's vision. And those are two very different types of jobs for me. So as a translator, my job is to support someone's vision, to do the best I can to make sure their vision is well translated. While it's technically correct to say that I worked on these games, still I'm kind of I'm being modest here. My input is just popularizing this vision and bringing this vision to a new audience. Unlike my work as a narrative designer or as a producer or someone like that, where my job is to actually create the vision.
By the way, I wouldn't undersell this thing. I have I have a thing for Witcher. I really like the books, and I even started to learn Polish just to read the books in the original. So around Witcher, and it's a game for the people that don't know what is Witcher, and it's books, and there's a lot of stuff. So when I decided to play the game, I decided to play it in Russian because Russian is kind of closer to the source material, to the original. And in the last book, the translator, the last book that was written a couple of years after he finished the installment, basically, and then he came back and he wrote a book that comes in between. The translators were different, and they explained in the book itself that they had to go to lengths to contact the old translators, to contact the author and asking them, what pun did you want to put here?
What did you mean by that?
We want to understand what was there. It feels like there was a pun here and we don't understand it. And he provided them with information, and the translation was great. So when I played the game in Russian, I kind of had a lot of fun. Then I had the chance to play it in English. I said, what a horrible thing. And people enjoy it because they don't know that there is a better thing.
Yeah, there's a whole layer of references they probably miss.
There are, things like when he says that Yennefer smells of lilac and gooseberry, which is a weird thing for a native English speaker to hear. It's just weird. It sounds natural in Russian, for example. It sounds even poetic, if I might say so. So
I mean, like the sound.
How it sounds, how it's accepted by your ear, so I wouldn't undersell the importance of a good translation, because for me it was, when I compared the things, that the books and the games between Russian and English, it's completely different. So, and also I read somewhere about you that you like to translate puns.
Yeah, I do. Who doesn't?
Those who don't know how to do that.
I'm again lucky enough to have a fulfilling career, and I understand that it's very much a privilege, but I do have the opportunity to work with projects that I like and not work with projects for money. So when I do translation, I do it either because I really like the game, or because I think that it's like challenging and interesting creatively. And puns are one of the most challenging things creatively to translate. So again, I have an option to pick projects where I get to have a lot of fun doing that.
Awesome. So I wanted to get back to your current role, to the creative producer stuff.
Or whatever.
And to the, or whatever. Right. So what can you tell us about the Pathologic Tree, and what are we waiting for?
By the way, before answering your question, there is a website called mobygames.com, which is like IMDb but for video games, and I actually went there while we were talking to take a look if I'm credited in all the translation games I've done, and I'm not. So I have like credits on 20 games, but not on...
I think we have a theme to contact Schreier about.
Yeah, that's the beginning of this new book.
I mean, that's an
this
issue
conversation
on the side of the Russian translation agency that I worked for that probably doesn't exist anymore. So it was like a long time ago. So don't bother. Anyway, back to your question. There once was a game called Pathologic, and then Icepick Lodge decided to reimagine the game. Basically, so it's not a remake, it's a new telling of the old story. And Pathologic 2 came up telling the story of one of the three protagonists. And now we're making Pathologic 3, which tells the story of another protagonist. The game itself deals with an outbreak of a lethal plague in a small backward step town on the outskirts of a something that might resemble early 20th century Russia, but not necessarily. So it's a fictional world and it's a fictionalized universe. But the aesthetic inspiration is that. And the first protagonist, the protagonist of Pathologic 2, called the Haraspes, which is a like a Roman type of diviner who divined fates from internal organs, is the son of a local quack healer. So the locals are mostly uneducated people who believe in folk medicine, and he is the heir of a local folk healer who gets to solve the issue of the plague using murder, mysticism, and brewing weird concoctions from herbs and human organs. He's also the kindest of the three protagonists and gets to adopt orphan children. So a person of contradictions in a way. The second protagonist, whose story we are telling now, called The Bachelor, as in The Bachelor of Science, not as in unmarried, although he is unmarried.
So any single ladies out there is up for grabs.
He is a scientist from the capital so he approaches the issue from the standpoint of academia. You know, he's kind of arrogant, but also this town is interesting to him because it hosts a number of weird visionaries who do surreal experiments that were banned from the capital for unknown reasons. So they are looking for immortality, maybe. And he is definitely looking for immortality. In his fancy lab in the capital, he was looking for immortality. Then he was prosecuted by the powers that be, and he kind of runs to this town hoping to find a rumored immortal man who lives there as proof of his concepts, to victoriously return to the capital. And then all hell breaks loose in the town and he gets trapped there, and now he has to heal all those people he doesn't even necessarily respect. So he has kind of to save this town that he's trapped in. That's the gist of the story. The very, very basic gist. And so I returned to Icepeak Lodge only recently. And one of the reasons I did that was that while I was working at Icepeak Lodge all those years, back all those years ago, words got jumbled in my head, I didn't really appreciate what the studio does in terms of game design. I'm not saying that all games, but the vast majority of games, especially mainstream games, use gameplay mechanics to create fun, which is awesome. I play these games as well. I'm absolutely not hating on them, but there are very few games, especially I'm not like a bit that have a bit better production values that use game mechanics and the language of game design to tell stories and create experiences that are only there to convey emotions. I'm not saying Icepeak Lodge is unique in this. Honestly, even though it's a very controversial game, I think Death Stranding does that. So I'm not as huge of a Kojima fanboy as some people are. I think his stories are kind of cringe. But what matters here is that he uses the language of game design, in Death Stranding at least, to tell those stories. And it's incredible. So, when he needs to convey a thing, apart from weird, overly lengthy exposition cutscenes, he also uses gameplay mechanics to do that, and it's great. So that is also what Icepeak Lodge do. And I think that there are a lot of very daring ideas with The Bachelor and his specific story and how it's told through game mechanics. So once again, the game features a mind map, but it works completely differently from how it worked with the Haraspes. And, as a person who has worked in commercial game dev for 5 years, I'm looking at this and thinking, how easy would it be for them to just reuse the mechanic that's already there. But instead they are reinventing it because they aren't really satisfied. Because like the thinking here is that, so the mind map represents the mental space of a character, and the Herospects and the Bachelor have different minds that work in different ways. So their mental spaces can't be similar. So even though we have a mechanic that already worked, we need to reinvent it and like make it work a bit differently because it's important to tell the story. And the team really isn't cutting corners with this thing. So the whole story is framed, which is a completely new thing compared to the original Pathologic. It's framed as an interrogation at the Capitol. And like some powers that be, again, let's say, are interrogating the main character and accusing him of basically destroying the town. And it's up to him to retell his story in a different way, which allows us to tell the story in a non-chronological order. So, like the short gameplay pitch says that the game features time travel, but it's not like magic time travel. It's that the hero can tell the story in a non-linear fashion, and he can change the outcomes of events because, like, basically the interrogator tells him, like, I don't know, like, Eva died on day 5 because of your actions. And, like, when you load the game, for example, she's dead. This character is dead on day 5 because of your actions. But you as a player can jump back in time and change how events unfolded, and now she's alive. And this represents how the character tells the story to the interrogator. And that's just one thing, and nothing even remotely close was ever present in either Pathologic or Pathologic 2. So that's like a completely different approach to storytelling, which the team chose because they feel that it fits the character and the type of story that they want to tell. Another example is that, like, the Herospects is closer to a classic action hero. So he can fight people in the streets. Like I said, he can also harvest their organs, which is a bit less conventional, but still. He needs to survive because he's a kind of belongs to a lower social class in the town, so he has to scavenge, for example. The Bachelor doesn't have to do any of that. Instead, he has to actually rule the town. So there is a whole layer of administrative gameplay where you like make orders, like you command people to do this or that, and that changes the whole the way the town lives. So like which places are infected, which measures are taken, who lives and who dies, and it's like a completely different game. And all of that exists because Icepick Lodge feel that this is what fits the story of this character, who is this, you know, arrogant prick from the capital, who belongs to the elite, so he is very welcome with the town's elites, and those elites allow him to make the executive decisions regarding the town itself. Whew. So everything I told you might sound like nonsense to those who don't know the IP, who don't know what Pathologic is, but
actually sold it to me.
Yeah.
Well, wish list now. What I'm trying to emphasize is that I'm deeply in awe with how Icepick Lodge cuts no corners in choosing the gameplay mechanics that will tell the story and create the experience of a specific character. Even though it's still the reimagining of the same old game, it's very different. And I think that's great because, again, I know some indie games that do that. Kojima does that as a not indie example. But generally speaking, you don't see that all that often in the industry. And like, I think, so we briefly touched upon mobile gaming, for example, in our conversation, but a lot of PC and console games, they exist to have the player have a good time. And all the gameplay inventions that they provide exist to grant good time to the player, again, which is a very noble endeavor. And like, I play all those games, I love them, but I also think that it's very worthwhile to explore this aspect of game design where you use mechanics to support a story and emotion that you need. Like, I don't know, What Remains of Edith Finch is another example of a game that uses mechanics to tell stories, but it's like, in between those scenes, it's a walking sim, and hopefully Pathologic 3 isn't. citation needed here. But again, this is another example of a game that explores mechanics as a way to tell stories, and like I just adore that.
Actually, I think you didn't play it yet. What Remains of Edith Finch?
I played it. I played it. Okay. I'm actually not one of those that really into this specific game, but I really can relate to games, and it's not AAA games don't do that usually.
Yeah.
Right. So
again, aside from Kojima, who's insane, but that's what makes him like very cool.
Yeah. One of my all-time favorite games is This War of Mine.
It's a great game.
Exactly the same thing.
Does exactly that. When I played This War of Mine and I already overcame the hardships of this game, then they release the DLC called The Little Ones, and this completely broke me. This completely broke me.
You don't game this. You don't play This War of Mine for the fun.
Have to say, I played this game before I had a child. Having a child completely changed me as a person, and I don't see myself playing it with the little ones today. I think it would break me completely. So yeah, I can relate. The 11-bit Studios is one awesome example of companies that does that. And I really
they're also a publisher that appreciates such games, because Frostpunk kind of does that as well. Indica does that as well. So they do release games in this vein, that take this approach to design.
Actually, many indie games, successful or not, trying to do this, to use their creative freedom to express themselves, and many fail, unfortunately, because they're like you have a lot of musicians and just handful of big names, right? So same thing in games. There are a lot of worthy games currently on Steam or on any other platform that are just for some reason didn't reach the audience, and I'm partially to blame for that, because I'm not
the guilty one.
I'm one of those that don't. For example, if you take me and Amit here, he has all kind. If you're opening his Steam, he probably has half of it, right? Maybe more.
By the way, I own Pathologic 1 and 2, so I'm going to play them later this week. But
please do.
Yeah, you see. I
got them from a bundle, but now I have a strong case of playing them. But
I probably have more games in GOG than in Steam, because what I do is just like I pirated all of those games when I was a kid, right?
Yeah.
So now
that's bad juju.
When I grew up, now I have money, I can pay back just a little bit maybe.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to buy all of these old games that were re-released on GOG. So we're different in that, and I'm not exploring a lot. And
yeah, I want to say something. Like I think, Alphyna, you touched on something that's really, you crystallized something in my mind. I think the AA teams that you put quotes on, but you're not the only one that does that, so it's cool. They are the only ones that can pull this off, because AAA studios can't pull this off. They have to return the huge investment
on marketing.
They can't experiment too much. Kojima is like, he's one of the main. He's such a character that he can pull this off. He has his own. He has his name on the production. Like it's a Kojima production by Hideo Kojima, the Kojima one. But so. They can't do that. Indie developers that have just started making games often can't pull it off, because it's hard just making a game come together, like to make the mechanics part right and to hit the story beats right. So we're left with experienced, awesome developers like the guys at I Speak Lodge, and but they do have the means to raise just enough funds to make the fidelity of the game like interesting and even look cool. You mentioned Indica, for example. I played it earlier this year. It looks amazing. Okay, it's in Unreal Engine, And
This says nothing. Nothing.
no, yeah, but
It's a
it's
great
using
game.
all the tropes from Unreal
Yeah,
Engine games, like the motion blur and all the lens flares and stuff. But it has its own style, and also it switches to 2D in some segments.
Yeah, those pixel art racing sections. Like I'm saying it, and it sounds like a joke. You know, those pixel art racing sections in the game about Orthodox Russian Church
Yeah.
in the 19th century. Yeah, they were a bit hard, but they literally are there.
And that
which is
game, that game also does the thing that you mentioned. It has a mechanic, which is not really. It serves the narrative more than the game, but it's so weird that it kind of pulls all the threads of the presentation and the narrative and the gameplay together. Like the one that you chant, that you recite sermons and change the world around you. I won't say any more than that because it's probably a spoiler.
A spoiler.
But
Yeah.
it has that quality.
Indica actually, like a lot of former and some current Icepick Lodge people worked on Indica, so it's like I'm not sure if they agree, but I feel that they are a bit of a sister studio to Icepick Lodge, so they are our friends, which explains why I was such a fan of Indica when it released. I just bought it and like played it as an ordinary consumer, and like that game was made for me personally.
Which is awesome. So, if we're coming to a conclusion, what's you just found your new calling? Let's say that because you discovered this thing that you can do and contribute more. What's next for you? What's the end goal?
Honestly, in this economy, in these times, I would hesitate to talk about any future, but I feel that, I honestly feel that I've resurrected my passion for making a bit weird video games. Like, I forgot how fulfilling it is to make games like that, and I would really like to keep doing that for some time at least. So currently, my goal is to help the studio finish Pathologic 3. There is also another project brewing at the studio already, which is great. And my next step would be to launch the production of the next project. So hopefully everything goes well and I'll manage to do that. But thinking in shorter term, a bit of ranting here.
We'll love ranting.
When I burnt out, there was a period, it turned out to be short, but it felt long, where I honestly kind of struggled with, I'm sorry to say, the meaning of life. It sounds funny, but it felt to me like, sure, I've done this, I've done that, I found relative success, like I'm happy in my personal life, everything's great, again, as great as it can be, in the horrifying and falling apart modern world. And I was like, and then I kind of lost my passion for making video games, and I was like, is there really nothing left for me here? And then my father, who's an extremely wise person, said, to you, making games is the same as love, as in romantic love, like a relationship. So if you have a relationship where like you have a house and you have a car and everything works properly and smoothly, but there is no affection, you can't be happy, he told to me. And I thought about it, and I thought honestly about how every time like I parted ways with a studio and with a workplace, it felt very similar to how I ended relationships. And I was like, there is something to it, and I realized that personally for myself, since I do have I have financial stability for now, at least, for example. I realized that I can allow myself to just do what I feel like, to do what I love, what brews this affection in me. It's just, I was very lucky to find it very, very quickly and feel that I am also that I don't only love doing that, but I'm also genuinely helpful to the people around me and next to me. But I understand very clearly that not everyone has the privilege of doing the work for love. Sometimes you need to earn the money to feed your family and everything like that. And I also need to feed my family as well, but, I manage. But I realized that for myself personally, if I can't work for love, I should, I don't know, explore other venues and rob a bank or something, because doing it without this affection just ends with me. It just ends with me burnt out, So, I guess the answer to your question is either things go well with Icepick Lodge, and we make Pathologic Tree and we keep working on the following projects, or I rob a bank. Yeah.
Right. Actually, it's a cool.
It's a cool way to coming full circle.
Actually, when you said like parting ways with a company, with a studio, is like parting ways with somebody you loved. I kind of made this reference a couple of years back. So when Jelly Button Games closed, and we all need to feed our families, so we need to find a new job. So I come to a new job, and it's a great place. It's an actually great company, but I'm somehow not satisfied.
I'm not there.
Well, the company is really awesome, like in every possible aspect. Maybe in another life, if I would to come to this company first, I would say this is the best company ever. But I made it the reference to my friends back then. It's like you're splitting with your loved one that you still love, and somehow you need to find a new lover today. And she's a nice girl. She's
nothing against her.
Pretty,
yeah.
But you still love the old one, and you want her back. So it's really like that, and
we had our loved one taken from us. Yeah. It was really sad.
Yeah, it was sad, but it's kind of tough. Okay, we spoke about it.
Beautiful stuff came out of it.
We had a whole episode about it. So usually we stopped doing that, and then we started back again. Usually at the end of our episodes, we tell that you have the year of mostly programmers, nerds, and stuff. Is there anything you want to say to them? Most of them are dreaming to do what you do in some capacity, to work on a dream, on an indie game, on something on a narrative they wanted to,
on something that moves them deeply.
Personally,
not just to, as you said, make ends meet. They want to work on something that's meaningful.
Yeah. Do you have anything to say to them?
Yeah. I think that in the modern gaming landscape, honestly, the bar to entry is very low. So if you can't draw, use AI. A lot of people hate that, and that's a completely different discussion, but at least for a prototype, you can use that. You can't code, use blueprints or make ChatGPT write stuff for you and use tutorials. Obviously, you need to learn something, but you can bash things together relatively much, much easier than it was even 5 years ago, let's say. So if you have an idea, don't wait for, an investor or a team or whatever. There's literally nothing between you and implementing this idea but time and learning some tools. Learning them is much easier these days than it was a couple of years ago. And I was extremely lucky to find a team that needed a hired person to do the things that I do. More often, people doing stuff that I do are founders of the studios. So I was extremely lucky. It happens very rarely. Don't wait for such an opportunity. Don't wait for an investor. Just, make a prototype, publish it on itch.io, look for feedback, and then if you realize your idea works, then look for an investor. So there in 2024, there was a crisis in the gaming industry and in the whole IT world, and I'm sure you know all about it. So a lot of people were laid off, and there were a lot of like cuts, especially in AAA companies and in bigger publishers. And there was a sort of like a period of hiatus for investment and stuff like that, but the industry is slowly raising its head back up because the market is still there. People like gaming is still the biggest entertainment in the modern world, and like the people who want to play games haven't gone anywhere. So I'm not saying like that it's like simple as that. If it was simple as that, I'd make my own like personal game already. But generally speaking, there are very few barriers between you and implementing your idea. So don't wait for someone to like form a team, give you money. Stuff like that is very hard to do these days. Making your own prototype is much easier, honestly. And then, you'll form a team around your vision if it's worthy. You'll find an investor, you'll find a publisher, and you'll hit it. So, yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. So it was really nice meeting you. Maybe we'll run it back sometime. And maybe after Pathologic 3 is released, we'll talk how was the publishing process and all the stuff like that. Especially when you're in the core of this thing. Yeah. You're gonna, how you said it, you're gonna make them publish it like normal people.
Yeah.
So it's awesome. It was awesome meeting and talking to you, and
we had a great time. And
likewise, it was a great pleasure.
Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'd be happy to.
So everybody, have a nice morning, noon, evening.
Whenever.
Bye.
All right.
Bye. Thank you.